Here is another story, or rather, an essay from Jim Corbett's book, Jungle Lore, where he takes us on long walks, mental walks through the territories that he knew best, the jungles of the Himalayan foothills. In this essay, he talks about intuition, which, like all great hunters, the best of doctors, teachers, judges, soldiers know plays a very important and sometimes life changing or life saving role in human lives. In this essay, Corbett calls it jungle sensitiveness. This is what he has written. While absorbing jungle lore, it is possible to develop a sense that has been handed down to us from the days of primitive man, and which, for want of a better name, I shall call jungle sensitiveness. This sense, which can be acquired only by living in the jungles in close association with wildlife, is the development of the subconscious warning of danger. Many individuals can testify to having avoided trouble by acting on an impulse that came how they knew not and that warned their subconscious being against an impending danger. In one case, the warning may have been against proceeding along a certain street in which a moment later a bomb exploded. In another, moving just in time from the vicinity of a building wrecked a second later by a shell, or in yet another, stepping away from the shelter of a tree which a moment later was struck by lightning. Whatever the danger may have been that the impulse enabled the individual to avoid, it was a known and anticipated danger. In the story of the Chogar man-eater, I have given two instances of subconscious warning. At the time the warning was conveyed to me, the whole of my attention was concentrated on avoiding being killed by the man-eater, and the warning I received that danger of an attack from a man-eater threatened, in the one case from a piled-up heap of rocks, and in the other from an overhanging rock under which I had to pass, was therefore quite natural and understandable. I should now like to give one instance of unconscious warning of unsuspected danger, which I can only explain as resulting from highly developed jungle sensitiveness. It was my custom during the winter months at Kaladhungi to shoot an occasional sambar or cheetal stag for the tenants of our village. One afternoon, a deputation arrived to remind me that I had shot no meat for some time and to request me to shoot a cheetal to celebrate a local festival on the morrow. The jungles were very dry at the time, making stalking difficult, and the sun had set before I found and shot the stag I was looking for. Deciding that it was too late to bring in the deer that night, I covered it up to give it a measure of protection against leopard, bear and pig, and made for home, intending to return with a carrying party early next morning. My shot had been heard in the village, and I found 10 or a dozen men waiting for me on the steps of our cottage, equipped with ropes and a stout bamboo pole. In reply to their questions, I told them I had shot the deer they wanted, and added that if they met me at the village gate at sunrise next morning, I would take them to where I had covered it up. The men had come prepared to bring in the deer that night, and they said that if I would tell them where the deer was, they would go out and try to find it for themselves. On the previous occasions on which I had shot deer for the village, I had laid a trail. The men knew the jungles well as I did, and all the information they needed when I shot meat for them was the position of the mark I had made on fire track, game path, or cattle track, and from this mark they would follow the trail I had laid. This system of recovering an animal had never failed, but on the present occasion, having shot the deer late in the evening and there being no moon, I had not laid a trail. The men were anxious to divide up the deer that night in preparation for the feast on the morrow, and as I did not wish to disappoint them, I told them to go up the Pawalgarh fire track for 2.5 miles and wait for me at the foot of an old haldu tree that was a landmark known to all of us. So while the men streamed out of the compound, I sat down to a cup of tea Maggie had brewed for me. A man walking alone can cover the ground much faster than a body of men walking in Indian file, so I did not hurry over my tea, and when I picked up my rifle to follow the men, it was quite dark. I had walked a good few miles between sunrise and sunset that day, but being as fit as man could be, an additional 5 or 6 miles meant nothing to me. The men had a good start, but they were still some distance from the haldu tree when I caught them up. I had no difficulty in finding the deer, and when the men had lashed it to the bamboo pole, I took them back by a shortcut which reduced the distance by half a mile. It was dinner time when I got back to our cottage, and telling Maggie I would postpone my bath until bedtime, I asked her to call for dinner while I had a wash. When undressing to have my bath that night, I was very surprised to find that my light rubber-soled shoes were full of red dust and that my feet were coated with it. I am very careful of my feet and have in consequence never suffered from any form of foot trouble, and I could not understand how I had been so careless as to get my feet all messed up. Small things have a habit of nagging at the memory, and the memory in turn nags at the nerves that control the cells in which information is stored. And then suddenly, and without any conscious effort on our part, the information we are seeking, be it the name of a person or of a place, or as in the present case, the reason for my messed up feet, is presented to us. The old trunk road, which carried all the traffic to the hills before the railway to Katgodam was built, runs in a straight line from our gate to the Boar Bridge. 300 yards beyond the bridge, the road turns to the left. On the right-hand side of this turn, the road, at the time I am writing of, was met by the Pawalgarh fire track, which for a few hundred yards followed the alignment of the present Pawalgarh motor road. 50 yards from the Boar Bridge, the trunk road is met on the right by the Kota road coming down from the north. Between the junction of these two roads and the turn, the road runs through a shallow depression. Heavy cart traffic had churned up the red earth in the depression, resulting in the road at this point being 6 inches deep in dust. To avoid walking in the dust, the foot traffic had trodden a narrow path between the dusty road and the jungle on the left. 30 yards on the near side of the turn, the road and the narrow footpath ran over a small culvert which had parapet walls a foot thick and 18 inches high to prevent carts running off the road. The culvert had ceased to function many years previously, and at the lower end of it, that is the end nearer the narrow footpath, there was a bed of sand 8 or 10 feet square on a level with the road. The information concerning my dirty feet that had been brought back to memory was that when following my men after tea, I had left the narrow footpath a few yards on the near side of the culvert, crossed the road from left to right through the 6-inch deep dust, skirted along the right-hand edge of the road, and after passing over the culvert, recrossed the road and continued along the footpath. Why had I done this? From the time I left our cottage to the time I overtook the men near the haldu tree, I had not heard a single sound that had given me even the suspicion of uneasiness, and I had seen nothing, for it was a dark night. Why then had I crossed the road, and after passing over the culvert, recrossed it? I have stated earlier in this book that from the day I traced the terrifying sound made by Danse's banshee as the friction of two smooth surfaces of wood, I have made a hobby of finding a reason for every unusual thing I have heard or seen in the jungles. Well, here was something unusual, something that needed an explanation. So before there was any traffic on the road next morning, I went out to try to get the explanation. The men, after leaving our gate the previous evening, had gone down the road in a bunch and had been joined at the village gate by an additional 3 men, bringing the number to 14. After crossing the Boar Bridge, the party had proceeded along the footpath in Indian file, crossed the culvert, and at the turn crossed from the left to the right of the road and gone up the fire track. Shortly thereafter, a tiger came down the Kota road, scratched up the ground near a bush at the junction of the two roads, crossed the trunk road, and proceeded along the footpath. Here the tiger's pug marks were superimposed on the footprints of my men. When the tiger had proceeded along the footpath for about 30 yards, I came over the bridge. The bridge is an iron one, and quite evidently the tiger heard me crossing it, for I was walking fast and making no attempt to go silently. When the tiger found I was not going up the Kota road but was coming in his direction, he hurried down the footpath and, leaving it at the culvert, lay down on the patch of sand facing the road and with his head a yard from the footpath. I followed the tiger down the footpath, and when I was within 5 yards of the culvert, I turned to the right, crossed the road through the 6-inch deep dust, skirted along the right edge of the road, and after passing over the culvert, recrossed the road to the footpath. And this I had done unconsciously to avoid passing within a yard of the tiger. I believe that if I had continued along the footpath, I could have passed the tiger with perfect safety, provided A. that I had proceeded steadily on my way, B. that I had made no vocal sound, C. that I had made no violent movement. The tiger had no intention of killing me, but if at the moment of passing him I had stopped to listen to any jungle sound, or had coughed or sneezed or blown my nose, or had thrown the rifle from one shoulder to the other, there was a chance that the tiger would have got nervous and attacked me. My subconscious being was not prepared to take this risk, and jungle sensitiveness came to my assistance and guided me away from the potential danger. On how many occasions jungle sensitiveness has enabled me to avoid dangers of one kind or another, it is not possible for me to say. But from the fact that in all the years I have lived in the jungles, I have only once come in actual accidental contact with a wild animal, is proof that some sense, call it jungle sensitiveness or call it my guardian angel, has intervened at the critical moment to ensure my safety. As Isaac Asimov and Arthur Clarke have written in different places, intuition and serendipity, that is accidental discoveries and inventions, happen to men and women with highly trained and developed instincts. So in that sense, intuition is a power that lies at the border of the natural and what we call the supernatural. But it is definitely, I have found in my own life, a very interesting phenomenon. And I think it needs much more focused, serious research than it has been given. We talk of our sadhus having miraculous powers, and all those miraculous powers may not have been miraculous at all, but simply powers that derived from their intuitive understanding that the mind has vastly greater resources than it is normally credited with. So think about it.